Okay, here we go. Hi everyone, welcome to our LinkedIn Live. We will give everybody a few minutes to log in. I hope everybody's having a good day. I'm going to be your host today. I'm Manu Agarwal, joining in from New Delhi, India. Would love to hear where everybody's logging in from. So, wherever you're logging in from, if you don't mind, just typing it up for us in the chat. We want to see what kind of audience we have, who's logging in, where are you coming in from. So, it would be great to hear some of your feedback. Uh, Also, it's a great day today in Delhi. I've come here only a couple of weeks ago for a short visit. Luckily, to be greeted by very good weather. So good onset of monsoon, not too rainy, at least as far as I can see. I know it was bad a couple of weeks ago, but luckily it's not so far. So feel free to type away. Where are you logging in from? What's the weather doing for you guys? Hopefully, all of us here are having a good day. And in the meantime, we'll give everybody a couple of minutes. As soon as we have good enough audience, usually takes about 2.5 minutes for people to start logging in. And at that point, we'll get the content going. Okay, and I see we have a fairly diverse audience. We have people joining in from Virginia, from UK, from Mumbai, Israel, Massachusetts, Addis Ababa, Colombia. Wow, we have a really diverse audience today. So it would be great interaction. Hopefully, all of you are all
Brilliant.
energetic. You love this topic. We'll have a lot of live discussions. We would welcome your questions along the way. So we have our own agenda, but we would love to engage with the audience and see what kind of questions you have on this topic or anything related to it, so that we can try and cover as many of those questions today in the event. Okay, we also have people joining from Hyderabad, Bangalore, California, Manila. So yeah, I think we were getting a fairly good coverage. What do you think, Avi? Huh?
Yeah, I
I don't
think
think I've
we are
seen this
covering.
diverse an audience.
Yeah, I think we are covering at least 7 or 8 time zones, if I'm not wrong. So it's brilliant. Yeah, hi, this is Abhi. I'm a practice actor at Everest Group. But yeah, very very excited to be today, and I'm joining in from London. I know. I mean, honestly, I wish I could talk about the weather with such confidence as Manu is, but yeah, in London, it's changing every 5 minutes today. So yeah.
Yeah, I'm honestly I'm lucky on this one. I left the light summers of New Jersey to come to Delhi for a few weeks. I was dreading the worst, but luckily the weather's been nice to me. The summer was already done. The months just hit, but the humidity hasn't been too bad. So I'm doing fine so far. So
Brilliant,
not
brilliant.
I'm not trying to rub it in though. Okay. Okay, so we see there's a fair bit of people joining in. So yeah, we do have representatives from a lot of time zones. I can see as far east as Singapore and Philippines, and obviously as far west as California. So we truly are covering a lot of different time zones today. So yeah, so with that, why don't we get going? So maybe it would be good to get a good round of introduction, just in case some of the folks joining in don't know us. So hi everyone, this is Manu here. I'm a partner with Everest Group. Been with Everest for about 10 years, based in New Jersey, but dialing in from New Delhi today. I look after all the work that we do in what we define as business process services, focusing on areas like trust and safety, content moderation, and a lot of the other industry verticals that we define within Everest Group. I'm joined by one of my colleagues, Abhigyan. Abhi, I would let you make your introductions before we get going.
Sure. Thanks, Manu. So yeah, hi, this is Abhi. I'm a practice actor with Everest Group. I look after trust and safety services, right? And I'm logging in today from London. Yeah, really excited to be speaking on this topic today.
Okay, perfect. So with that, before we kind of get started with some of the questions, let me quickly lay down a little bit of the context why we thought that this is an important session for us to do. So when you really think about trust and safety or content moderation, which is a pretty large branch of trust and safety, one of the big questions that we have always been getting from the industry is that, okay, is technology really going to take over trust and safety? Is it really going to be the big disruptor? And if so, what does the path towards that adoption look like? So honestly, at this point, your guess is as good as mine. But what we do aim to do today is we want to talk about what is the role that technology is already starting to play in trust and safety. Also, we also see a lot of companies starting to invest in that industry, in the technology part of the trust and safety. So we're going to take a little bit of a look at in terms of what does that look like, what are the kind of technologies that are actually going to disrupt trust and safety as it stands either today or heading into the future. And finally, one of the most important questions that we want to kind of talk about is what's the return on investment. So we keep talking about technology investments, but we at the same time we also see that the life cycle of most of the technology these days is not very long. So does it even make sense for a technology company, an IT provider, a big tech to actually invest in technology, hundreds of millions of dollars, only for that technology to get outdated in 2, 3, max 5 years? So how do you really measure the ROI in that kind of an environment? How do you ensure that my investments are not going to waste? So those are like some of the rough topics that we want to talk about today. But again, repeating, if you have any other questions, we would love to hear from you at this point. Feel free to start typing your questions away. We're going to get started on our first question, but we would love to hear what other questions, conversations, comments do you have as audience today, and we'll try to cover as many of those in our conversation today as possible. So with that, Abhi, the first question I'm going to pose you to today. So I know we keep talking about trust and safety and content moderation is a very manual industry, right? We still see thousands, actually tens of thousands of people, possibly hundreds of thousands of people doing the BPO, the content moderation work in the industry. So does technology even have a role in trust and safety? I think that's probably the first question that a lot of the audience today joining in has for you. So how do you answer that question?
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Manu, for that. I think, yeah, it's a very, very important question. And given the, I would say, the kind of, you know, jitters actually that some of the technological advances have made in the trust and safety landscape, I think it's an important question to answer. And if you think of it, I mean, keeping aside everything, right? If you just think of the most fundamental reason why technology is very, very important in trust and safety, I mean, let alone all the other advantages that technology brings through. I mean, if you look at the amount of content that is produced on a daily, even on every sec that is produced on every second, right? I mean, it's humongous, right? Now, to moderate such large amounts of content is almost, I would say, is not even feasible if you were to use only human moderators, right? So, given the large scale of content, right? And also the variety of content. I mean, it's not about just some, say, text or image or video that we're talking about. We even have live content today that needs to be moderated, or there are different nuances to each content type that is produced today. You obviously need a scalable solution that can moderate this content at scale, and also can do it really quick, right, with a fair degree of accuracy. So, which is why, I mean, this is the fundamental reason why technology is needed, right, and will always play a role in trust and safety. Other than that, obviously, if you also think of one of the key pillars or tenets of trust and safety is the impact that harmful content has on the well-being of content moderators. Now, in an ideal world, what you would really want is that, if technology could completely take over the moderation of what we call as harmful or egregious content, right, so that the impact on the humans would be minimal. Now, we know that that's not possible, but to the extent that it is possible, yeah, technology can play a great role in reducing this impact. I mean, on the other hand, technology can even play a role in in improving the content moderator well-being once, say, a moderator has been exposed to such harmful content, right? I mean, there are several tech interventions that we can think of which have helped in improving the moderator well-being, and is being adopted and are being adopted widely by a lot of organizations. Also, the fact that there is a need for consistent enforcement of content policies. I mean, you really cannot uh, go with a plan that your content policies would be enforced in different ways in different situations, and in several such cases technology actually helps to enforce them consistently. Also, the fact that if you look at the content today, a lot of that content, yes, is still produced in some of the most widely spoken languages in the world, like English or Spanish or Portuguese or Mandarin. But there are also a lot of languages coming up which historically have not been that, I would say, present on the internet, right? Now, to moderate such languages, also, technology plays a great role because it can act as a translator, it can act as a moderator, assisting human moderation. And also, last but not the least, right? I mean, if you look at the impact of new technologies like generative AI, and we'll come to that in a bit, I mean, there's so many, I would say, moderation use cases that have come up because, essentially what has happened is generative AI is acting as a content generator, right? So obviously, with generation of content, proliferation of harmful content is also there. So whether it's plagiarism or whether it's, deep fakes or whatever that may be, there are a lot of those things that technology is anyways giving rise to, right? So but to deal with a lot of this content, again, you need a very scalable solution, for which you need technology. But the bottom line in all of this discussion is that it's not about technology replacing humans, or it's not about technology being the be all end all when it comes to a trust and safety solution. So I'm sure a lot of us know about the concept of augmented AI, where it actually talks about technology being an assister, right? Or a complementary solution which can help human moderation get better. And that's the, I would say, direction in which technology is evolving and has evolved to a certain extent. So that's the play we see over here, that there is going to be a synergy between humans and technology, with each playing its own vital role and kind of complementing each other's abilities. I see we already have some questions coming in, right?
Yeah, and we let so as was not surprising. I think one of the first questions that did come up is actually on generative AI and more specifically Chat GPT or Bard. So yeah, actually let me pose that question, also offer my 2 cents before we can add in. So I think one of the big questions that we're getting is, hey, generative AI is here. We have Chat GPT and Bard on the scene. So what is that point at which these technologies will become robust enough that they will basically eliminate the need for any manual moderation? And the second question, which I think, and Anupam, thanks for that question, which you're also asking is, okay, hey, in the time it takes for those technologies to mature, what are some of the other use cases these technologies can play, which they can reduce the human exposure, they can prevent humans from getting exposed to things that they should not be. So let me offer my 2 cents on this. So I think first things what we need to realize is these technologies are still comparatively new if you think about their application in the at an enterprise level. But from a generative AI standpoint, these technologies have been around for a while, right? In fact, very few people know, but the earliest use case of generative AI actually date back a couple of decades. So what we do need to understand is these technologies are going through a maturity curve of their own. Don't get me wrong, they're pretty good. They can get the right answer about 70% of the time, which is probably more than what you can say for humans. But you still need that extra bit of accuracy coming in, because when you show a process that a human to a human, they can very easily follow that. That's the step. That's the maturity curve that these technologies need to go through. So as they go through that, there are going to be applications of these technologies where you don't need that 99% accuracy. A 50%, a 70%, an 80% answer is probably good enough. And that's where what we're starting to see is early applications of chat gpt, of large language models, of bard and other technologies. Eventually, at what is that point at which they take over the human moderators? Honestly, I don't know if that's going to happen. To Avi's point, the content is actually evolving at such a rapid pace, both in terms of volume, in terms of complexity, in terms of rules and regulations and guidelines. I don't know if we're going to see that future anytime near. Possibly not in even our lifetimes. So I think end of the day, the technologies need to mature to a point where all the process and policies kind of stabilize, and then technology can start automating through a lot of it. But if the process itself is fungible, if the content is fungible, there's new fraudsters coming up, there's new ways in which people are kind of finding abuse types. I think that's probably going to keep the human in loop kind of a model very, very prevalent. I don't know, Abhi, if you have any other thoughts that you want to add to it. I know this was actually one of the topics that we were going to touch upon. So do you want to kind of substantiate this a little bit?
Yeah, absolutely. So, one of the other things that in addition to whatever Manu mentioned, yeah, all of those very very important, and I think very, I would say, they provide us a direction in which the technology will evolve and kind of assist the humans. But also, one of the things that we need to realize is that technology development and making it more robust is not really a recursive process, although ideally that is what it should be. So it's not about just applying one rule or definition or procedure again and again so that it becomes very robust. So if you look at the rules or definitions or procedures which are used to help a technology become more robust, right, they keep evolving. And a lot of actually human insights are required to make sure that those rules and procedures evolve with evolving content types, with evolving threat types, so that the technology learns and becomes better, right? So yeah, there is always going to be a role for humans to play, right? Human moderators to play. So even if think of a world where essentially, let's say, if it was so that trust and safety would be completely taken over by technology, right? So even in those cases, right, to train those technology to help them make better, you would still need human intervention. And we have ample examples of, I think, models which are kind of, I would say, self-trained without any kind of human intervention, and the inherent bias that comes into those models because there is no human intervention, and it's not really learning from new use cases. I mean, those inherent biases have led to very, I would say, not so desirable results. So yeah, from that point of view also, I think humans will always have a role to play.
So actually, that brings up an interesting point, and I'm going to put everybody on the limb here, and I'm going to run a live poll now. So we would love to hear from you. What do you think is the time frame in which you feel that generative AI and large language models are going to basically take over the content moderation industry? So give us your best guess. There's no judgment here. There's no right answers, no wrong answers. What do you think is the right time frame? Is it 1 year? Is it 2 years? Is it 2 days? Is it 20 years? What do you think is the right answer? Please type it in the chat. We would love to hear what the public opinion on this topic is as to the time frame in which generative AI is basically going to become the default standard for content moderation. While we get those answers, let me move on to some of the other questions. And again, again, I invite people to start typing in more questions. I already see a few of those questions coming in. I think, one of the key questions that I saw coming up in the industry is the entire role of the content policies. So I think we touched upon this earlier as well. So we know that the industry is still very fungible. The policy framework hasn't fully evolved. Even the regulators are struggling with it. So I think the question, or rather the comment here, one of the users made is they would love to see regular amendments to the content policies to keep up to date with how the market is evolving. What are your thoughts on that? Have you seen either regulators or even enterprises on their own starting to do something in that effect, or do you think that okay, we're still very immature as an industry, that this regular update to the content policy is probably going to be a long shot?
Well, what I would say is that in terms of the content policies, I haven't yet seen regulations which are very, very particular in terms of the content policies. But what we are increasingly seeing is an appetite from regulators to be more flexible and to kind of evolve as the landscape evolves. But that is more from the point of view of online harm and content moderation and the role of AI itself. So for example, if you look at the tenets of the Digital Security Act that has come into Europe, right? And it is going to be enforced for the uh, uh, companies who are not tagged as large vendors from 2024. So one of the tenets of that is that there is a committee within that is going to constantly update itself, right, on the how the landscape evolves in terms of the online harm, and they're going to constantly revise those policies. We are hearing similar things being echoed by the UK government in terms of the legislation that they want to bring about for governance of AI technologies. So yeah, there is a movement towards that. So we believe that while they're not very specific to content policies as such, right, with in terms of the types of content or specific types of harmful content, but it's a step in the right direction. And because it has a more, I would say, more encompassing remit, right? So which is why we believe that we'll see it for the content policies as well, that as the technology evolves, as the content types evolve, as the role of even human moderators evolve, and the we see maybe even new types of harmful content that are coming up every single day, the regulations will also start evolving. That's one. The second thing is, if you look at the pace of development of regulations, right, with respect to content moderation, generally they have lagged behind the pace of development in content moderation, right? But with the possibilities and the potential threats posed by generative AI, what we are seeing is this time the regulators are generally acting on an average faster than they typically have, right? So which is again a welcome sign, because that means that there will at least be some initial frameworks in place for a lot of organizations to think about and maybe frame their own policies on top of them.
Got it. So, in the meantime, we had a lot of responses flowing in from the audience. I see people saying something to the tune of, at one extreme, we feel that, okay, generative AI is already here. In the next couple of months, that is going to become the default technology for trust and safety. And at the other extreme, I'm also hearing answers which say, hey, this is never going to get there. So let me take an average out there for the audience. It seems like more or less people are saying, hey, this is around a 4 or 5 year kind of a horizon by which we think the technology is going to. If you disagree with that, you're welcome to kind of put in your comments in the section. Help us understand why do you disagree with it. Why do you think it's going to be faster or slow to that? Would love to hear your opinion and kind of consolidate what the audience believes. In the meantime, I'm going to switch gears a little bit, move outside the realm of generative AI. So I know I'm probably going to get shot in the foot for saying that. Everybody wants to talk about generative AI, but I do want to kind of progress the conversation. There is a lot more technologies than generative AI. So let's have a look at what those technologies are. And I'm going to pass that back to Abhi. Abhi, I know you and team have been doing a lot of work investigating the roles of these technologies, who's investing in them, what the adoption rates. What are some of the insights that you have uncovered through the research that you and team produced in the last few months?
Sure. Yeah. Thanks, Manu, for that. So yeah, I mean, if you look at the technology landscape, and just a bit of a interesting tidbit, I think towards the end of last year, OpenAI they announced that they are going to invest in a generative AI based trust and safety solution. But they did an experiment and they compared generative AI, in its then form with the current technologies that are present in trust and safety. And what they found out was that the current trust and safety solutions, or the underlying technologies, they are more accurate and more robust compared to the generative AI models that were present, during the end of last year. So so what that means is, yeah, there is some ground to cover for generative AI. Meanwhile, there are a lot of powerful technologies that are already out there, and there are several organizations who use these technologies to create their own trust and safety solutions, right? So whether it's a natural language processing, or machine learning, right, or even optical character readers, right, whatever they may be, or even computer vision. So there are a lot of these technologies which are used in multiple cases, whether it's in terms of image processing, computer vision, right, or text processing, or even converting images and videos to text, right, hash imaging, all of those things, right? So yeah, I mean, they are being used successfully. Obviously, there is still scope for a lot of those technologies to become more robust, and become more, I would say, uh, help them understand context better. But a lot of these technologies are already being used. In fact, even if you look at generative AI, right, I mean, generative AI is, in theory, right, it's not really a new technology, right? It's almost, I mean, it's based on the deep learning models that are already present, right? So yeah, I mean, it's just that it's a better version of the ones that are present out there, in that it has much larger capacity to generate content, right? But yeah, I mean, it's not something which is new per se, right? Now, in addition to the technologies, if you actually look at the trust and safety technology landscape, right, uh, I mean, one thing's for sure, that most trust and safety solutions today are still largely, human moderator based, right? And the reasons for those are obvious. I mean, whether it's the inability of AI to understand context as well as humans, or their, accuracy of output, right? Or the several nuances or complex pieces of work where you need humans to intervene and understand the context and make a judgment call, right? So because of that, it's still quite human focused. But the fact is that because its content is evolving at a very fast rate, you still need a lot of scalable solutions, right? Which is where technology comes in. Now, the important thing is that, if you look at the several enterprises, right, who essentially need a lot of trust and safety services for their platforms, right, what's happening is that, as far as technology is concerned, right, when they have to go out and look for solutions, right, apart from what they already have, one of the challenges that they're facing is that there is no end-to-end solution that exists as of today, right? You have a lot of companies who are doing brilliant work in trust and safety on the solution side, but most of this work is limited to a few trust and safety use cases, right? Whether they might be across an industry, or they might be specific to an industry, they might be specific to a content type. So from the enterprise point of view, what's happening is that they have to essentially reach out to multiple providers and piece all of those solutions together to create the solution that they need for their end-to-end services, right? The other thing is that if you look at the pace of content growth and the pace at which technology develops, there is a lag between the two, right? So typically what we have seen is that the content types develop first. There are harmful content types which come into the picture, and then the technology is developed to deal with those, right? So for example, if you look at deepfakes, the kind of deepfakes that are now being created using generative AI, where it's almost impossible to differentiate between that and the real one. So now generative AI is kind of playing catch up in becoming more robust so that it can detect those deepfakes, right? uh, and so that's why and it's the same story with the other technologies as well. The other fact is that sometimes also what has happened is that there is a gap, again, like I mentioned, there is a gap between the technology developments and the regulatory landscape. Typically they have not really developed at the same pace, so which is why we always end up with situations where you can use facial recognition technology in certain countries but you cannot use in others, right? So yeah, there is that thing that needs to be addressed as well. So all of this, what that essentially means is that if you look at the moderation of any type of content, right? So essentially, right now, in most cases, human moderation is present at every step, right? But that's more of the current scenario, but that doesn't mean that the industry is not moving towards a more tech based solution. But like we mentioned before, it's, I would say, less of a, I mean, we don't like to call it a tech based solution because that's not the truth per se. So what we essentially see is more of a synergy that is coming up between humans and technology. So whether it's the emergence of new technologies like contextual AI, or if you look at it from the stakeholder point of view, that we see a lot of collaboration between different stakeholders, service providers, tech vendors, enterprises, right? And there is also increasing integration between tech vendors with take the solutions, combine them together to provide a more integrated solution. So whatever it may be, so all of that point towards one single thing, that there is an effort, there is a need, and there is an effort to create a more end-to-end trust and safety solution with specific human intervention wherever it is required, right? So that's the beauty of this kind of a solution, where essentially you take advantage of the strengths of both, and you help create a better trust and safety solution for everyone.
So given we have such a diverse audience here, we have enterprises, we have service providers, we have technology companies. Let me ask a question to the audience again. So, what are those big technologies where you think the investment has yielded the maximum return for your organization? What are those big bets from a trust and safety technology perspective that you feel are the right ones for the industry to make? And I'll get some of the ball rolling, right? Let me do like a bit of a recap. I think about this time, maybe last year, Abhi and I were in another webinar or another one of these LinkedIn Lives, and we were talking about the role of metaverse and how metaverse was going to be the next big thing, how the use case of trust and safety were going to be allured in that universe. About a year later, what we've now seen is that, okay, hey, given all the macroeconomic stuff, while the use cases still exist, the number of people experimenting with those use cases has significantly diminished. So what has basically changed in the last year is a lot of the early adopters have gone out of the industry, and what we're left with is more pragmatic users. So now, if you apply that in your context, in the technology that you are seeing flourishing for your firms, or the technology that you feel are going to be most ripe for investment, what do you think are those big bets going to be? What do you think are the technologies that you feel most comfortable investing in, versus which are those technologies that you think, yeah, the ROI and the path towards that is actually not that clear. So I would probably take it with a pinch of salt. Okay. So in the meantime, uh, we post one more question to you. This one comes from Ria, who you I know very well. So she's going to put you on the spot here. So if you would gun to your head, which would be that one or two technologies that you feel are going to be the most important for any enterprise to have as part of their trust and safety stack?
Well, I mean, honestly speaking, it's difficult to say that because I don't see any technology yet which can, take care of all the trust and safety use cases, right? But if I were to take a very very educated bet, I think any technology which is based on the concepts of deep learning, for example, generative AI, right? Those would probably power ahead because of their inherent, capabilities to evolve based on the data that is being fed to them, and the way that they look at the output that is created and try to differentiate between real and fake inputs, right? So I think that is the one that I would keep my eye on the most, that all those technologies which are probably based on deep learning would probably take precedence over others. However, having said that, we also see a lot of work being done by several large enterprises on the translation engines, right, which typically use a lot of natural language processing. And given that translation transcription is critical part of the content moderation process, so my guess is that those will also continue to play quite an important role in the near future.
Okay. And another question related again to one of the specific technologies that this one comes from Rajneesh. Sorry, Rajneesh, for keeping you waiting on this one, but I was sort of building up to this one. So, Web 3.0. What are your thoughts on that? So we know Web 3.0 is starting to become a lot more real. We still see some early adoption use cases. This is more prevalent probably in the financial services sector, more in the digital currencies and the cryptocurrencies part of the universe. Do you see an application of this in the trust and safety universe? Are you starting to see enterprises starting to experiment with use cases which are specifically built on top of the Web 3.0 stack? Or do you think this is still a little bit of a while to go?
Sorry, Mano, is that question for me?
Yeah, that was for you.
Yeah, Manu, if you could just repeat that question. I think what you're asking about is, do we see enterprises building on top of Web 3.0?
That's right. Web 3.0, keeping in mind specifically the trust and safety stack, right? So the entire concept of the decentralized internet, how does that enable better security functionalities, better data integrations, having a more trusted environment, which is one of those things which is becoming a lot more important in trust and safety. So as all of us know, trust and safety is starting to evolve beyond content moderation, and there are use cases around platform safety, payment safety, all of that starting to come in. So do you see companies experimenting with Web 3.0 technology, or is it still too early to say?
No, I mean we see companies experimenting with Web 3.0, but I would say I think in terms of the investments, probably it has also taken, may not be to the extent of the metaverse, but it has also taken a bit of a backseat compared to the more recent developments around generative AI. But one of the things that I would want to call out over here is that in Web 3.0, the three pillars which they generally call out, which should essentially mean better trust and safety. At least that's the claim, and that is that there's privacy, safety, and representation, right? So from that point of view, I think a lot of enterprises would probably want to invest more in Web 3.0 compared to what we see right now. But yeah, I honestly, and I might be wrong over here, but yeah, I don't see the level of investments in Web 3.0 when I compare it to something like generative AI, right? Having said that, there are certain early challenges, or I would say early use cases that were highlighted even last year as well, right? So regarding NFT frauds, that was one of the most challenging use cases that was brought up. And interestingly, that's relevant even now, and has been brought up again as well, I mean, as generative AI developed, because the underlying problem of piracy and differentiating fakes from real, that doesn't go away. In fact, that becomes even more critical in something like an NFT and the related fraud that might happen. So from that point of view, I also think that for a lot of enterprises, they're also looking at you know building Web 3.0 on a layer of generative AI. I mean, that is the idea that I've heard, right? Because Web 3.0 also anyways works on an underlying layer of AI. So the enterprises are going back and asking why not generative AI as that layer, right? So yeah, that's where
Yeah,
I
and
see it.
yeah, and I've heard of some of that as well. So I think one of the key pillars of Web 3.0, as you rightly pointed out, is how do we make the internet more secure, right? And the trust and safety, by definition, is also about making certain platforms and environments more secure. So I think what's going to happen is as Web 3.0 starts becoming more prevalent, you're going to see higher adoption of digital currencies. It's going to make the payment ecosystem a lot more secure. So I would actually invite a lot of the audience to kind of come and read one of the recent papers that we wrote about the role of fraud and trust and safety together in the realm of digital. In fact, it's fresh off the news. We just put out that paper last week. If anybody's interested, feel free to ping us on LinkedIn or otherwise, and we'll be happy to send you a complimentary copy of some of the abstracts from that paper. So with that, and I know we are about 35 minutes in, I don't want to keep people too long, so I'll start moving towards some of our questions that we originally had as part of the LinkedIn Live session. And I know one of the big conversations that we were having is that what are some of those inherent challenges in terms of adopting these technologies? I know you probably already spoke about most of this, but especially for if you think about a lot of the audiences here, what do you think are most likely challenges that they will face as they end up going through this technology journey? Have you already come up with seen companies who have faced those challenges and come on the other side of it? What are your early thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think more than anything, probably what's going on in people's mind right now is, that if you look at AI, right, at the end of the day, whether you use AI or humans, the goal is that you are able to moderate it based on your full understanding of the context, right? Given that AI is still not at that place where it can understand context completely as well as a human can. So yeah, that is still a gap that is to be covered, right? So that is one of the biggest challenges, and I think also the fact that keeps playing catch up with the increasing complexity and diversity of the content, right? So that's another concern as well. So overall, what I'm trying to say is that AI is, yes, it has come a long way, but it is still nascent, right? When it comes to the capability, when you compare to the capabilities of some of the human moderators, right? So from that point of view, there is a significant, I would say, gap that needs to be overcome before you can actually get AI to play a significant role when it comes to moderating some of the more complex content, right? So that's one. The second is, like I spoke about before, the evolving regulatory landscape, right? So as of now, the regulations around content moderation, use of AI, employee well-being, they're all evolving, yeah. And the other thing about regulatory landscape is that, and we have spoken about this time and again, and we see this, all the time, is there is no standardization in terms of the regulations, right? So, if you move from one geography to another, the regulations change drastically. So if you look at the even with respect to AI, there is a draft safety bill which has been proposed in EU, right? But there is no, I would say, overarching AI related legislation in the US, right? While there is one which has been introduced in Brazil. So there are several such instances even on the content moderation side, right, where the regulations from one country vary for one country is different from another. So what that means for the global platforms is that, in terms of your policies, the way you're creating policies, you have to make sure that you're essentially walking a very fine line between adhering to the local regulations, but at the same time you're making sure that you do not trample upon the fundamental right of people to freedom of expression, as well as make sure that your platform doesn't lose its global nature, right? So from that point of view as well, yeah, I mean, in an evolving regulatory landscape, it becomes difficult to have an exact path in terms of technology adoption. Also, obviously, one of the other things that always keeps coming up in any tech discussion is, what is it going to cost me? Is it too costly? Is it going to be much costlier than using human moderators? Is it going to be much costlier than the current technologies that we are using? So yeah, I mean, the cost of adoption of emerging technologies, it remains high, but the good thing is that the cost is dropping every single day, right? So that's a good thing. But again, not every organization on earth has the resources or the expertise, right, to adopt every technology, super fast, right? So obviously there is a proper investment path that you need to chart out before you think of adopting any technology, right? So, and then obviously the one thing that Manu spoke about earlier, I mean, that is proving to be probably the trickiest of all, that which technology do I invest in? I mean, I invest in one technology and then it essentially dies down within a year, then I have made a lot of investments but there is no ROI on that investment, right? So it becomes very important to understand which technology I should be investing in. And the way to do that, yeah, I mean, there are multiple ways to do that, but we'll come to that in a second. But yeah, I mean, that is one of the key questions also to answer when you think of adoption of technology, right? So yeah, I would say these
And
four are the main questions. There are probably others, but yeah.
and that's starts kind of bringing us to the highlight of today's session, right? So I think one of the most important questions that we've been hearing from pretty much everybody in the technology space today is what is the ROI of these investments and how do I measure it? So before we get to answering that question, I do want to take up another question or two from the audience first. But in the meantime, if you have also been struggling with the measurement of ROI in some of these technologies, we would love to hear what your questions on that space is. We'll get to that conversation in just about a couple of minutes. Before that, Abhi, there is another question from the audience that I've been holding on to. So we talked about the challenges towards adopting technology, but one of the enablers towards adopting this technology is the entire concept of the public-private domain. Right. So if you think about, there's a lot of data that generative AI has been using on the public domain side. Now we're starting to see some private implementations of it. So let me broaden that question out. I know this started as a generative AI question, but let me broaden this out to public versus private deployments for pretty much any technology, because most technologies these days, they rely on providing them meaningful training data, meaningful exposure, economies of learning, and scale. So how do you see the entire public private partnership, or possibly the prevalence of one versus the other, helping or hurting the adoption of some of these technologies, specifically generative AI, but also extending beyond that?
Yeah, I mean, I think in terms of usage of public or private domain, right, from the point of view of training the AI models, right, whether it's generative AI or the others. Yeah, for most enterprises, what they would ideally want is a combination of both, because the absence of any one of them introduces an inherent bias, right? If you use only private data, then you're essentially not learning from what's out there. If you use only public information, then you're essentially not customizing it to your own organization, right? But from the point of view of these, say, different AI models that are out there in the industry, I think the proportion of public versus private data that is being used for training will probably depend more on how that application is going to be used and licensed more than anything else, right? So if, for example, if you're going to have a completely private large language model, maybe, then it's highly likely that the data that you will use for training it will probably be more on the private side than use of public information. Because what also happens is that as you're using this training data to train the AI, you also need to make sure that you have enough guardrails in place, that your own data that you don't want to essentially get leaked out doesn't go out, right? So yeah, that's also there. But at this point in time, at least I do not have an exact view, I would say, on what this proportion will be or which one will take more precedence over the others. But in general, given the kind of landscape that we are looking at for trust and safety solutions, the fact that there are several private solutions out there, as well as there are certain public ones which can be licensed. So my belief is that they will continue, the landscape will probably continue to be so. And depending on the solution, how it is being licensed, that will decide whether you use more private data or you use more public data, right? But yeah, one thing's for sure, that it will never be one versus the other. It'll be a combination of both, but that combination may differ from one company to another.
And I would add, I think a lot of this also depends on the kind of environment you operate in. Heavily regulated industries, your financial services, your insurance, your healthcare sectors. There's always this tussle around. Okay, hey, do I really want my data getting exposed? And they just feel more comfortable with private deployments. Versus when you get to the less regulated ends of the industry, you'll probably be more open towards public deployments, as long as that brings benefits back to you. So yeah, I think we still have to see how these use cases evolve, but the early signs are pretty predictable. All those regulated industries, they're going for private deployments. They're not so regulated industries, they're very happy with trying out with some of the public data, because they don't really see a lot of sensitivity in data being used to train the AI models, and then that AI model being used by other companies to improve their efficiency.
Yeah.
Okay, so with that, let's get to the highlight of the day. So return on investment. That's honestly the $1 million question, if not a higher number question today. So how do you really measure ROI on technologies which are coming thick and fast, and also evolving thick and fast? So I would love to hear if there are some good tricks that people have tried out, if there are some concerns that they have with this entire measurement of ROI. I'm sure you and your companies are trying to figure out, okay, hey, is this the right technology for me to invest? How do I really explain the benefits, explain the ROI to my investors, so on and so forth. If you have any of those questions, feel free to pop it in the chat, and we'll try and answer some of those questions. But in the meantime, Abhi, I know you've come up with a framework to help measure the ROI, or help maximize the ROI from some of these technology investments. So help our audience understand what those key pillars of this framework look like.
Yeah, absolutely, Manu. So just putting it out there, I think this one of the frameworks that we have developed. There is another framework, right, which we have put in a uh, report on the technology landscape in trust and safety, which deals with how exactly would you look at uh, trust and safety solution, whether it's serving your purpose or not. We call it the RACE framework, so do have a look at it, right? It's a good framework to think about, how exactly would you want your trust and safety solution to be, right? But coming back to this question, so yeah, I think there are five key pillars amongst others that one should think of in terms of deciding on which is the right technology to invest. And we always preach uh, using a use case based approach, that look at the use case, you measure it, you see what is the success of that use case. How well do you want to how well are you yourselves aligned in terms of attacking that use case, so that can decide on your technology investment, right? So one of the things that we talk about is the business alignment, that whether you have the ability to complement the one that you want to invest in, whether it has the ability to complement your current solutions, right? So it becomes easier to adopt. Yeah. Also, whether it is aligned to your overall trust and safety strategy, right? So for example, if your trust and safety strategy says that I will not want to moderate maybe certain types of content, then essentially your technology investment should also follow that principle, right? Also, one of the key things that we have looked at and we believe is very important is how well it is aligned to your ESG principles. Because if your ESG principles might tell you about the sustainability of your tech investments, and if you believe that the technology out there might solve several use cases, but it's not really a sustainable investment, then yeah, you might be better off staying away from it, right? The other thing that we talk about is the market potential. Obviously, this is very important, that you look at your total addressable market that you have by using this technology. What is your growth potential in new market segments that you would want to target with this technology? What is your short term impact versus your long term potential in the market, right? The third one and the fourth one is kind of closely related, are how easy it is to adopt that technology and what is the cost of that adoption. So for example, we were talking about the metaverse. So like metaverse kind of was there at the top of mind for a year before it kind of has burned out for now. So for example, if someone had realized that, or if someone had thought that this is going to take a long time to adopt, then essentially by the time that adoption happened, it would already have burnt off and there would have been no return on investment, right? So also need to think about your impact on current operations. If it's going to disrupt you completely, then you may need to think of a better way or a better technology to adopt, which kind of works in tandem with your current operations, right? Also how scalable it is, right? So you really cannot invest in a technology which works for one platform but doesn't really work for the other, right? Then it becomes a very non-scalable solution again, which only works on specific trust and safety use cases for a specific platform. And like I mentioned, the cost of implementation, the return on investment, the time that it will take you to get that return on investment, they're very important factors, obviously. And the final one again, which we need to be very very careful of. We have seen a lot of times where people have been burned because they have not had this as a consideration is the risk of adoption, right? Like whether you're running into a regulatory risk, whether you're running into a reputational risk, whether you're running into a competition risk. I think a few days back there was one of the generative AI models which had been flagged because people saw that there were activities around trying to sell certain IPs of that technology on the dark web, right? So you might want to be very aware of such technologies, that what is the kind of use cases, or what is the kind of situations this technologies are being used for, right? So that you don't want to be associated with the wrong one. And obviously the final one, which is again kind of goes back to one of our earlier point of discussion around ease of adoption and cost of adoption, that how uh, well do you think that technology, or how long do you think that technology is going to be relevant, right? So for example, I mean, we have seen public clouds being a major success. So early investments in public clouds are probably given off a good a great ROI. In fact even now we see a lot of enterprises investing in clouds because the ROI is still pretty good, right? So yeah, so I think these are the five main considerations. Obviously there might be others, and absolutely would want to hear from you. What are the other factors do you think are important, in terms of deciding which and how you would want to invest in technology as far as trust and safety is concerned?
Yeah, honestly, I mean, you said dark web in there, and immediately my mind kind of went all red flaggish. Because yeah, I can't imagine a future where you're deploying technology to do trust and safety, but then that in itself becomes a use case for trust and safety because somebody's selling the IP of the technology in dark web. So imagine all sorts of hell that will break loose if your technology was getting subject to that kind of misuse. So, but yeah, with that, I know we've had a lot of interaction today. We're coming towards the end of our event. If you have any last questions, would love to hear from you offline. And if you haven't already done that, there is a complimentary abstract of one of our recent reports, the key takeaway report. If you would like to know about what's the technology landscape in trust and safety, who's investing, what are the various technologies and tools that are available to you out there, please go there, check out the report. Avi and team have done a great job kind of publishing a lot of good, deep insights in there. So hopefully you'll learn something new. So with that, we'll sign off for today. Depending on where you are logging in from, good night, good evening, good morning, as it may be. So over to you for the next time. Thanks. Bye, everyone.
Thank you, everyone. Great discussion. Thank you.